Hello everyone, welcome to Art Lounge Alley. This is Figure Drawing Basics Part 79. I'm your host and I will be starting the stream right now. I am going to continue working from what I was working on last week. I'm going to do a brief review for those of you who are just tuning in for the very first time, to give you a better idea of what we're really dealing with. Now, right now, of course, this is a blank page. So let me just flip back to this page right here. And what are you looking at? You're looking at all the different ways that the light hits the face. And these small diagrams just give you a general idea. It's not really meant for detail. This is what these diagrams are for, to give you a better understanding of the gradations from light into dark, from highlights into shadows. So starting off with the very first one, here the light source is directly on the face. I have this model here that I also sculpted. That's really helpful when it comes to this, because you could maneuver it any direction that you want, according to the light source, create the light source according to how you change the face. I highly encourage you guys to jump into this, really start trying to play around with clay, because it gives you a really good understanding of like all the face features and why. You're going to be able to look at it, let's say in profile view, and you're going to realize, this is too short. Like if the brain was actually here, this part, the back of the head, would actually be a lot bigger. You could compare it, and then once you sculpt it to be exactly as whatever the model is, whatever the reference is, you now have a permanent model at your disposal. You could change it around any direction. And this is great for traditional type drawing. Like I know now digitally, even with the program that I'm using, Clip Studio Paint, it offers you models that you could work off of. But even there, they're extremely basic. I think there aren't details on the face, or if they are, they're very stylized. I think doing this really gives you a better understanding in general of what the human face is like. And by forming all this stuff, starting out with the very basic empty ball of clay, and then having to like layer everything on according to the structure of the skeleton, and then having to lay on the muscles on top of that, really gives you a great foundation for when it comes to the face. And as I mentioned, you could really maneuver it in any way that you like, not only for shadows, not only for light and shadows, but also for perspective. So for example, if you wanted to see, like, if the camera was coming down from the bottom, what would the face look like? So you just turn it up like that, and then from there, you could sculpt, you could draw it out. You could be like, all right, these are the features, this is what it kind of looks like, and work off of that. You could even change it to 3/4 view below, and so on and so forth. You guys get the idea. So there's multiple benefits to it, and it might not, you might not grasp it immediately. It might be very challenging, but there are tutorials out there. This is something that I'm considering of doing, maybe a tutorial when it comes to sculpting the face. But there are many speed painting ones. Speed sculpting, I guess. Videos and just other videos in general that show you how to sculpt, and it's fun. It's a really fun process, and it really does transition well from sculpting onto drawing. They really complement each other. All right, so yeah, just going back to this here, the light source is directly on the face, so as you could see, a lot of the shadows formed underneath here. He is missing eyes, so it's a little bit challenging to do in comparison to this, but you could see that the highlight, similar to this model here, the highlight is right on top of the nose since it's directly on the face. Any part of the face that's protruding is going to get a lot of highlights. So the chin, right? There's a point that it comes out. And of course, a lot of these features vary from person to person, but you'll understand based off of this how it kind of affects other faces as well. So the chin is capturing a lot of it. The lips, they're also protruding. So the bottom lip, considering it's from the top and not the bottom, it's like a beam, right? So it's coming down. This part of the lip is blocking anything underneath it. So you could see that there's shadow underneath there as well. And the deeper it goes, the darker that line gets. So that's like that line down the middle that divides the mouth. The lips are protruding out. So underneath it, there will be a shadow. And you could see that it's capturing a lot of the light as well. This area right here, also important to note, is protruding out with the lips. So it's going to capture more light than as opposed to this area right here, this plane, because it's flatter. This is higher, right? So because it's higher, it's protruding further out, and it's going to capture more light than this area. So this area should be a little bit light based on this direct light source on the face. And you can see that it's similar here. Now here, of course, he has more defined cheekbones than she has it on this model, but you could see it's still there. It's slightly like right underneath the cheekbones. There's shadows here as well. There's shadows. And of course, the most noticeable one, I think, is underneath the nose, because again, the nose is protruding out so much, it's blocking any light from being able to hit the face right underneath the nose. And then obviously, in the same example, since these are sockets and this top part of the brow is protruding out as well, it's going to create like an awning, right? So it's going to block any light from hitting this area as well. So any part that's really further in is gonna get more shadows. So this part is further in, this part is further in underneath the lips, this part is further in underneath the bottom lip. Any part that goes further in underneath the cheekbones is going to capture more light based off of top or front light source. So yeah, as you could see, different face, right? Different face features, but the premise is still the same. It's the same areas that are being hit by light and forming shadows in the same areas as well. And that's what I mean. Once you understand these principles of how the face is formed, it's easier to grasp where shadows are going to be, where highlights are going to be, regardless of face features. Next, we got this one here. This is directly from the right. The light source is coming directly from the right, so it's like this. As you can see, it's very similar. Most of the left side is in shadow, and then the right side is capturing a lot of the light. So the peak of the cheekbone, right, the area that's protruding out the most, is capturing highlights. So you could see that really is a lot lighter here. Tip of the nose, you could see that highlight right there. I don't know if you guys are able to see it better, but I'm gonna try to bring it up. But yeah, you could see that highlight there. This area of the lip, since it is divided into sections, the bottom lip, even the top lip as well, the area that is the most, the highest, is going to get the highlight there. So here is going to be a lot of highlights. You could see this line right here, this very thin line that defines the lip. That's capturing a lot of the highlight. So it's a great, as you could see, it's a great way to study the light source on it. Now, I'm only holding it in this direction because of the lamp. You know, having to maneuver it around is going to be problematic. So for the sake of this example, I'm just showing you guys what that looks like. Let me see, actually. Let me try to move it over. So like a little bit more dramatic light there. For the sake of explaining this better, yeah, the left side of the face is completely in shadow. Right side isn't. It's capturing a lot of the highlights there, as well as the tip of the nose, the bridge, and this point right here on a brow line. That's also protruding, so it's going to capture some of the highlights there as well, considering the light source, considering that it's coming from here. Only a little bit, if you guys can see that, only a little bit of light is actually traveling over to the other side. This beam is able to get past the nose, obviously casting a shadow, depending on the height of the nose, and then it's coming over to this side. It's able to make it right before the rest of the face. This plane right here ends up taking a really hard turn towards the back, so you're not going to be able to see any of that. That beam is just going to keep going further past this area, so you won't be able to see it. It's not like water, you know. If you pour water onto this, the water will really take the shape of the face and cover up all these areas. Light is more of like a beam, so it's going to go and just like slice through whatever, and if anything is going to get in the way of it, it's going to cast a shadow. So yeah, this is this example right here. Moving on to this one, it's less extreme to this, so I'm going to move it a little bit more towards the light source, but you could see it's still pretty similar. The gradations are just a lot more subtle. So going from highlights, you can see right here, this is like the peak of the brow. So it's getting, since the light source is coming from here, it's going to hit this area right here and then move on past this. And as you can see, this same plane again, because it's turning away from the light more, it's turning inwards down. It's not going to capture any of that light. It is getting some light from my hand, so you're getting some reflective light. Now, if I remove that, you know, I block any of these light sources, it's going to be in complete darkness. But again, the way that it travels, you will get reflective light. So notice that when I hold it, even though this area right here is casting a really hard shadow, this part is getting some light. And compare what you're seeing down here to this really hard line. That's kind of like, I want to say, the fence between the light and shadow, right? This is the fence right here, that middle line. And then anything else past that is going to be shadow or reflective light, whereas anything on this side is going to be light. So this really dark line right there down the middle, if you can see that. So similar to the other example, you could see the nose is pretty much the same. I'm going to say the light source at the peak, highlight right there at the peak of the nose. It's casting a shadow. Now notice the lips aren't as much in the shadow, because instead of the light source coming from here, it's now moved up more, and it's able to hit the face more directly on there. So similar to the previous example, as you could see, there's slight light that was able to illuminate this area, whereas in this example it's more so. Right now you could see more of that cheekbone. There's still a shadow that's cast, and notice what's going to happen as I move it closer and closer towards the light source. You see that? You see that shadow from the nose? How it starts to travel inwards more? That's just to show, you know, the light is coming more towards this way, and then the more and more it keeps going, you could see that the face, it really gets illuminated, similar to how it is here. Alright, so here you could see that the bottom of the lip is getting a little bit of light, bottom of the lip here, and then the upper lip is getting a little bit, but it's still in shadow because it is curving inwards, and it's curving inwards towards the mouth and curving inwards towards the other side of the face. So two areas that it's curving in, and because of that, it's getting shadows. It's not able to capture that light that's traveling in this direction. The bottom lip, though, is doing pretty well. You could see right here, and the chin as well. So similar to here, you see how this in this example, the lip is getting light, and the upper lip is getting light. The chin, some parts of the chin are getting light right here. And the nose is casting a shadow with a little bit revealed on the cheek. So you could see that all in here, and it's very similar. Again, two different looking faces, right? Different features, but the way the light is playing with their features is very much alike. You could see that this area gets revealed, this area gets light, this area gets light, the lips are getting light, the lips on the chin is getting light as well. So very similar to it because of this, the angle of the light source. Next we got an above one, so I don't know if you guys could see that, but here in this example you could see that, it's less dramatic. This is a very dramatic example to show the light source. So of course the top of the crown, the head is going to get a lot of the light. The nose is going to get a lot of the light because it is the highest point on the face. It is protruding out further than any other feature on the face. The lips are getting some of the light as opposed to this example. But again, this isn't meant for detail. This is meant to show you an extreme version of where the light source is coming from. So the hair, the face predominantly. But once you look at this example, you could see that it's very similar. Now I'm going to try to angle it, the light source, angle it similar to how it is here. Which means that it's really, like, you see how there's shadows forming right on this area as opposed to here. Like, there's still some shadows here, but most of the shadows here, which says that the light source is really coming from this angle. So the light source is always going to be the opposite side of where the shadows are. That's a good rule to remember. Light source is always going to be the opposite side of where the shadows are, not the same side. And I'm just emphasizing that because a lot of times people make very confusing shadows. Like they'll do shadows on this side, but then when it comes to the nose, they'll create a shadow on this side. So just as dark as this, for example. And that's going to break the drawing instantly. So no matter how much detail you put in, let's say you render it as much as possible, very close to how you see it here, no matter how much detail you put in, you make that mistake, your drawing is broken. You're breaking the fourth wall there. And it just kind of shows you're not grasping the light source. You're not grasping how it plays with the face. So important detail, light is always on the opposite side of where the shadows are. And you could see that here as well, that on the bottom of the neck, there's a lot more shadow than there is here, despite it still being there. But yeah, you could see the subtle, gradual transition from midtones to shadows, from highlights to midtones to shadows in this example especially. And then even though this model doesn't have eyes, not yet, it is still the same concept. As you could see, the eyes, the sockets of the eyes aren't capturing a lot of light either. So in comparison to the rest of the face, you could see the cheekbones, you could see the forehead, etc., but not the eye sockets, same as they are here. The lids would get highlights because they do protrude out Now again, this is like a really incomplete version of where the eyes would really fill up a lot of this empty space. And I promise I'm going to be working on that. I am pretty excited about it, actually. I want to see what it turns out like. But yeah, it's the lids would capture some of that light shining down. Next, and the last one for this page, you got this one. This is like the most exaggerated one. This is, I'm going to say below. Now this is going to be challenging because I got to really move the lamp here. Took forever. Might have to do it this way because, yeah, I'm gonna need to like really trying to make it the best I possibly can so that you guys can actually see in front view as opposed to like these sideways. Trying to match this as much as possible. So I'd say this is pretty accurate right here. Slightly different features, but you guys can still grasp the general idea of how like the light source hits the face. So as you could see here, the bottom chin gets a lot of light. You know, his chin is a lot more prominent than hers, and that's something that I think is also a difference in sex. So because he has a more prominent chin, this shadow is a lot more it is featured more on his face than hers. So you could see right here where the light source is hitting. It's hitting the chin, but because it's protruding out more, it's casting a shadow and it's blocking any light from hitting there. Now look at where the bottom of the lip is. Usually you would have a shadow forming right there, right? But because the light source is coming from the bottom, it's hitting the area where usually there is shadow. Now finally the light is able to creep into that little crevice right underneath the lip. Now again, with like the lip, as you see here, right, the upper lip is getting a lot of shadow because it's blocking any light that's coming down from this direction, from the top down. But here it's the opposite. So unlike here, the bottom lip is getting shadows, right? And then unlike here, the upper lip is getting highlight. Now here again, look at the nose, right? The bottom of the nose, underneath the nose, it's unshadow. Here it's the opposite. So it flips, becomes the opposite. So how it is here, how you learned it was here, it's now the complete opposite. It's reversed when the light source is coming from this direction. So the eye sockets are getting a lot of light, whereas here, here, it's the opposite. It's not getting a lot of light. So it's flipped again. The forehead really depends on the angle here. But in this case, the forehead is getting, let's see, maybe it has to be like this really to really show it. yeah, I'd say like this is probably closer to how it is here. Because you could see like the forehead isn't getting any highlights. It's just this area as you see it here. The nose, the bottom of the nose as you see it here. The upper lip is getting some light. The bottom of the lip is getting some light. And then shadows underneath it. So that pretty much does it, y'all. I just wanted to do this brief overview. It's the beginning of the week. You guys had a weekend off. Hopefully, those of you who are learning, you guys put in some good amount of time and kept on practicing, because it's the only way to improve. Like, no matter how many shortcuts I give you guys or how well I explain it to you, you still need to put in the time. You still have to create it. It's like math problems, right? Very similar to that idea. If I give you the answer and I explain it to you, it's not gonna be the same as if you were to just sit down and work it out yourself. Like, if I just give you the answer, you would just know it, but without you actually doing the problem, understanding and doing that addition, subtraction, which is basically the technical parts of drawing, you wouldn't get the answer on your own. So you got to sit down, you got to put in that time, you got to draw for hours. Really, if you want to see, the more hours you spend, the faster your results you're going to get, you know. So even if you spend a half hour every day, you're going to get some good results, as opposed to like once a week for 3 hours. You know, that's still better than nothing, but the more consistent you are, the fresher your mind is to all the things you learned the day prior. You know, so if the previous day you learned all these things, you're going to remember the next day, oh yeah, you know, this is where the shadows form if the light source is from the top left. It's on the opposite side of the light source for every feature. You're going to remember that better than a week later, you know, when you sit down to do it. So just in that idea, you know, your building blocks are a lot closer to each other, as opposed to having huge gaps in between. And that makes a sturdy foundation. You know, if there's a lot of gaps in between, that's going to be a pretty shaky ground. All right, so I'm going to do the final one. Well, there's like 2 more images on here. Wow, that took some time, huh? It took a little bit of overview, but I'm not going to continue to do that throughout the week. You guys can always access old streams by going to the video section in the Twitch channel. You go to the video section and then filter based on collection, and there you will see a folder for every stream that I have throughout the week, for figure drawing, for drawing comics, for coloring comics, for project stream. All of them are there from episode 1 up until now, so you guys can always go back in time and just check out what was discussed then. And that's going to save a lot of time every day, you know, and push me to like present you guys with new content. But Twitch is making it a little bit difficult. They're putting a cap to how many videos you can have, which is understandable, but yeah, that's the way you guys can find old streams. So I'm just starting out with a light sketch, a very important stage in the beginning of any drawing. I'm setting parameters. I'm trying to say, okay, like, this is how big I want it. Maybe I want it smaller. You know, maybe I want it a lot bigger. So by drawing out this quick sketch, I'm able to position the drawing where I want it to be, scale it as big as I want it to be prior to jumping into doing more definitive and hard lines and putting in the hours and trying to render it and then finding out like, crap, doesn't even fit. And now I have to like either start all over, erase a lot of things, muddy up the drawing, that whole thing. So I say it's better to avoid that by doing this. And it's a great habit to get into. It's something that you have to kind of wrestle with in the beginning when you are just starting out to draw, because it is very much a beginner thing to want to hold on to the pencil harder, press on the paper harder. It's a way of assuring yourself that you have sturdiness, that you have control over your lines, because you still haven't trained your flexibility in your hand. So your line work, your hand-eye coordination is very shaky. So it's just like a psychological thing almost, to really try and have a good grip on everything in order to make sure it comes out the way you want it to. When really you could achieve the same thing, if not better, by having more of like a loose grip. And the way you get good at it is by practicing, is always keeping it in mind. In the beginning, it must be light. And just making it a very conscious effort to maintain it. Even if you mess up, even if your drawing looks a little weird or wonky or whatever, dedicate to it, stick to it, and then eventually it's going to become second nature for you to do it. Just like anything else, when it comes to drawing, when it comes to learning anything, it just, you prefer it after some time. Now, I'm a little concerned that the head might be a little too big, and I might have to dial it down. And that's exactly the reason why it's great to sketch, because I can dial things down. I can actually change angle and trajectory and height and all that stuff, because nothing is set in stone yet. Also, another important thing, especially for those of you who are beginning, is drawing this line down the middle. And if you guess that it really allows you to compare both sides, both halves of the face, you guess right. It's a very useful tool for exactly that. When you're drawing out the eye, right, I'm going to do a placeholder. You want to make sure that they're both at the same distance from the middle line. You don't want it to be too close to the middle line while this one is too far away. Or this one's just right in the right place, this one's too close. Or it's too far away, almost touching this side of the face. In this perspective, let's just say. So, this line down the middle helps your eye make that judgment. So until you develop that second nature, right, until your eye gets so used to seeing everything on the face in the position that it's supposed to be in, anatomically correct, proportionally correct, until you get to that point, it's best to use this guide. I can't tell you how many times I still see, like, I flip through Instagram and I even see like old work of really amazing artists, and they would make that mistake. They would have their comic book page, and the way that they drew the face, you could see one eye is pretty large in comparison to the other one, or it's a little too far away from the nostrils. And of course, it's a learning process. They became amazing. Eventually, they were really, really good. But it's just to say, even professionals, even people who are we consider to be really great, they made that mistake as well. So don't feel discouraged when you do the same. And this is the way you make sure you avoid that mistake. A very, very important detail. Don't make one eye higher or lower than the other. Don't make one eye closer towards this middle line than the other. They should both be mirroring each other, like literally. They should be exactly in the same place on both sides of the face. And you have to really compare that, stare at it, dart your eyes from one side to the other and be like, which one is higher, which one is lower? Are they about right. Is the corner of the eye on the same line for both? And that's a lot of times why people also do this line going across. Don't draw it hard. Draw it just enough for you to be able to see it on paper. You guys might not be able to see it because I am doing it light as well. But that's what that line is there for, to ensure you don't make that mistake. You don't draw one eye higher or lower than the other. Then this mark right here is also another really important one that really breaks a lot of drawings. And this mark is the distance between the corner of the eye and the nostril nose. I haven't drawn the nostril, but very, very important. People make this mistake so often, where they, especially beginners, where the nose is a lot like that gap between the corner of the eye and the nostril is way too long, and that makes the drawing look really weird. He has this like super elongated face, and it could instantly change a drawing from looking terrible to looking great if you make that if you fix that mistake. You will see like a night and day difference in your drawing once you recognize that and you keep an eye out for it. So just the same way as making sure that the corner of the eyes are on the same line, both sides are on the same line, one isn't higher or lower than the other. This nostril, the distance between the corner of the eye and the nostril isn't incredibly wide. Both of those things are game changers. So it's just simple things like that you can't overlook, that can ruin, like make or break your drawing. And really, a lot of times when it comes to drawing the face, and this is the huge difference between drawing the face and drawing something like, a vase or a shoe or flowers or whatever else, is that all those things, drawing from still life, you can fudge and it'll still look all right. It'll still look like a flower. You don't draw this little vine properly or an angle of the vine properly, still is going to look like a vine. You don't draw the shoelace exactly as you see it, still going to look like a shoelace to somebody. But if you make that mistake on the face, forget it. Your drawing is going to look off. So it's just to show that, whatever it is that you want to draw, it's very important to draw from real life, because it pushes you to really study and notice detail, not just the face, but noticing details. You want to make your eyes sensitive to that sort of thing. You want to make your eyes sensitive to observation, because that's a lot of drawing. Even if you're working from imagination, if you develop this like second nature for noticing detail, you could build your visual library that way. You're walking around the street, and because you notice certain details, you're able to be like, oh, that's cool, I like that. You start to notice things that an average eye doesn't notice in that process. So many benefits to drawing from real life. It's kind of like, for those of you who are gamers, it's kind of like playing something on hard mode, so that when you play it in normal, it's going to be so much easier. You're so aware of every little thing, and you have to be so conscious of every single thing that you have to do in hard mode or super hard mode or whatever, that in normal is just a breeze. So it's kind of similar to that. You're working your eye to be so proficient and so aware of little details that when it comes down to drawing the face or something more simple in form, it's easy. You could be like, oh, but, I've done something way more difficult. My eye is like capable, my hand-eye coordination is in sync way more than what this calls for. And that's not to say, once you're able to do it, there's nothing to learn. There's always, and that's the beauty of like drawing from real life or drawing the figure, is that there's always something challenging to learn from when it comes to the figure. Every person's different, their features are very different. So it's once you learn somebody, let's say you sit down and you draw somebody and you learn their features and you nail down what they look like, you did it for that person, but the new challenge comes in when you meet another, as a new model. A new model has different features on there. So that's the beauty of it. It keeps you practicing. It keeps you challenged. And it pushes you to level up all the time. Great source of practice. Great source of learning. So I'm still just putting placeholders, like, okay, this is where the shadows are going to be. And I'm studying their relationship to each other, like how much higher should this shadow be over the eye compared to that? Like just in that reference, like, should it be a lot higher? Still keeping it light, still playing around with the light sources where certain shadows are going to be. Similar to how the eye is, right? You want to make sure that one isn't higher or lower than the other. And the same thing applies for the ears. You don't want to make one earlobe higher or lower than the other one. That's also something to look out for. Something that's kind of challenging with this one is in the reference, her hair is actually lopsided a little bit. Like, it's not on the same line. This part of the hair is not on the same line as this. So it's making it seem as if the things are kind of shifted. Or it's like pushing other parts of the face to be shifted. When really they're on the same line, it's just a hair that's making it seem to be like one is higher or lower than the other. And the time flew by, as usual, everybody. So I am gonna have to end the stream shortly and get ready for the next one, which is drawing comics. This is going to be me working off of John Buscema's comic books. I dedicated myself to drawing the entire comic book from page to page, and that includes inking and coloring. It's unfortunately, I don't have more time for it. I only have time for it once a week, so it is taking a lot longer than it would if I was to actually work on it full-time every day. Which is basically what John Buscema was doing. He was pumping out 2 issues per month at the level that you guys are about to witness. So stick around. I'm going to take a quick break, and then I will be glad to show you guys some of his amazing work, panels, and his amazing artistry. Alright, y'all, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy the content, make sure you remember to hit the like and subscribe button. They're both greatly appreciated, and they help the stream grow and branch out to more audience. And I'll see you guys in 5 minutes.